have 2 sample digital portfolios that teachers you're welcome to use to get a sense for what this might look like for you and for your students. So this is the landing page. This is what people will see when they first come to my portfolio. And you'll see at the bottom here that I've got a couple of different pictures of me. And what we're going to ask kids to do is to drop in a picture for every year of high school or of middle school or for every year that they're in Northside. So this isn't really my 9th grade picture. I wish it was, but I've got 3 pictures, one representing 9th and then 10th and 11th grade. And then if I was a 12th grader, I could input that next picture the next year. We want to challenge kids to drop those pictures in just because we want to kind of explore and document that journey so that they can see how much they've changed over the years. Some students that we've worked with were a little nervous about putting their pictures in, and that is fine. So if a student does not want to put a picture of themselves, they can put a picture of something that they're really interested in, and either way, that would be fine. So if they wanted to do that instead, again, it might be really interesting to see how their hobbies and interests and passions change over the years. The next part that you'll notice is that navigation bar here at the top. So you might put in an About Me or a resume page, or you could skip this altogether. That's up to you. And then we've got a page for English and then for any of their other core subjects. Now, teachers, this site that is accessible to you also contains your how-to tutorials and then some frequently asked questions for your information. Let's go back to English 1 though. So if I'm here, I'm going to click on English 1, and this is the page that is only my content, my work for English 1 for the school year. And what I've put on here are some samples just to illustrate what we've been talking about. This portfolio is organized according to the grading period. And what I've done is use some real work samples from LitPro week 1, just to represent what this might look like for your students. So here at the top, I wrote a little bit about our unit focus during week 1 of LitPro, which is on expository writing. And I have 3 work samples that really show my progress towards that learning goal. And the first one is my summative assessment, which was my expository essay about living in South Texas and the experiences that I've had that helped me to answer the prompt about how a place can shape a person. And then I've got 2 in-class practice assignments that really helped guide my thinking as I wrote my essay. So there's a real clear progression from my experience, seen, and know chart to my blueprinting to my expository essay. And then underneath that, you'll see that this is where I've written my reflection about how this connected to what I already knew, how I extended my thinking on this assignment, and what was challenging for me. And those are really just the 3 pieces that I've worked on that I felt were the most relevant and showed my growth towards that learning topic, or that learning objective. I could definitely put in more samples if I wanted to, but I think these 3 are enough. And when we think about digital portfolios, we want to think about how we are asking our students to curate their work and to be really thoughtful about documenting their growth as students. I did put in some other pieces just because we had another summative assessment, and that was our narrative or memoir. And my 6-word memoir really goes with my narrative, and so I put these 2 together here. If I'm working on the second grading period, and again, just for the sake of the example today, I've decided to put in the work from LitPro week 2. And this is my second summative essay, Does the Place You're From Define You? And I was thinking I would put in my in-class practice, which was the 8 purposes chart. And I still need to drop that in, and then I've got places down here where I'm going to write my reflection. And that is just one way that you could organize your digital portfolio. So if you wanted to organize yours by grading period, you could have students focus on the learning objective and the work that shows their growth. You could also have students organize theirs according to the genre. So again, here's my landing page. You can see those 3 pictures of me from my different grade levels. And I'm going to go to English and click on English 1. So instead of organizing by the grading period, I might want to organize my pieces by genre. And this would be a really ideal arrangement if you were doing portfolio assessments at the end of a longer period, for example, at the end of a semester or even at the end of your school year. And that first section for me is fully processed essays. And so again, I wrote a little reflection on the essays that we wrote in the class this year. I've dropped in 2 of my samples so you can see my summative. Here was the narrative about a place where I feel most at home. And then this is my essay explaining one way a place can influence a person. And then as I scroll down, you'll see this next section is for timed writings. So I need to drop in the timed writings that I wrote with my class. And I might have writer's notebook entries, or I might have multimedia presentations, any of the other work samples that I made in my class that I wanted to use to show my growth or my learning in the course that year. It's really up to you as the teacher to decide which model works best for you. That also might be a consideration that you're making with your PLC or with your department, depending on what your department goals are or what your team goals are. So if everyone in your team or department feels that they want to reflect on a regular basis during each grading period, or if they want to reflect at the end of the semester or at the end of the year, you have a model for both of those ideas. Setting up your digital portfolio with Google Sites is very simple. Start by going to the Apps Waffle and selecting Sites. Now, when my page loads, I'm going to have a long list of different sites that I've created. If your screen looks different, that's not a problem at all. We're going to go to the far left side and we're going to click on New Google Sites. And then we're going to go back to the far right and click on the plus. Once your new page loads, we're going to click on the words Untitled Site in the top left corner, and we're going to change the title. I like to keep the naming convention simple. I like to use the class period, last name, and the name of the class for my students. So I'm going to say 1ST, last name, and my class. Enter. You're going to want to say 1ST or 2ND or 3RD and actually use the number in your naming convention, and I'll show you why at the end. Under page title, we're going to keep this really simple. We're just going to call this Digital Portfolio. And you'll notice that you've got these blue dots here on the sides of our text box, and these are just for resizing. So if you want, you can stretch this out a little bit more so that it doesn't take up as much space on the page. And then if you remember from our 2 sample digital portfolios, the next part is that we gave students a place where they could add a picture of themselves or a picture of something they were really interested in. And those come from these layouts right here on the left. This is one of the great things about new Google Sites is you don't have to know a whole lot about coding in order to make a great digital portfolio. So because I teach high school, I'm going to click on this one with 4 blocks to it. Now, if I'm teaching freshmen, this is a good one because I can put in a picture for 9, 10, 11, and 12. If you teach sophomores and this is their first time setting up a digital portfolio, you might use one of these just for 10, 11, 12, or maybe this one or this one, depending on what grade your students are in. So since this is English 1 for me, I'm going to click here and I'll type 9th grade. Or I might type 2019-2020 for the school year. And I can play with the formatting a little bit here and here. If I want to do that, I can also change the text size using one of these formats. The next piece that I'm going to do, and I'll just keep this normal text. So the next step is to add the actual picture of yourself. And I'm going to click on the gray plus, and I'm going to add one from Drive. Now, students can add a picture from their phone. They can add one from Google Drive if they have one. They can also select an image of something that they're really interested in. We did have some students who were just kind of shy about sharing their picture. So if they want to add something else, they can do that too. So if I'm going to add something from Drive, I click here, and it's going to open up these options for me on the right. So one of the things that I like to do to find those pictures is either use recent or starred as my options. And if I click on recent, it's going to pull up all of my recent documents. And great, my selfie is here. So I just click to insert it, and now I have a picture of myself from the 2019-2020 school year. If my students don't want to add a picture of themselves, and we had quite a few kids who were just feeling a little bit shy about sharing their own image, instead I can ask them to share a picture of something that they're really interested in. So I'm going to click on that gray plus again and click select image, and I'm going to choose search. And my favorite place to go is definitely the beach. And what this is going to give me are some options of images that I can use. These are all both school appropriate, and they are free and fair use images. So I can drop any of these into my Google site. And I definitely love the beach, so I'm going to choose this one. And it's dropped in my picture. If I double click, I can move this a little bit to rearrange that image and get a little bit more of it into the box. I can also resize it by pulling those blue corners. Okay, so I've got my landing page all set up, and I'm ready to add some content and start dropping in information about my English class. So we're going to go to that far right, and we're going to create a page. Now this, remember, is my landing page. I don't want anything on here except the pictures of me and my title digital portfolio. I'm going to create a page that is just for my work in English. I'm going to go to pages and then click on the plus, and I'm going to call this English. So here is my all English page. I'm going to hover over the word English, and you'll see those 3 dots pop up. Okay, and the 3 dots just mean more options. So when I click on the 3 dots and I add a subpage, this is where I can add in the actual course that I'm teaching this year. And that might be English 1, it might be Comm Apps, it might be ISM, whatever the class is that you're actually teaching. So I click on English 1 and I click Done. So this page is for all the content for just my English class. I don't need to worry about making a page for English 2 or English 3 or English 4 because the next year's teacher is going to be the one that makes that. I might also have students that have a digital portfolio in other subject areas like math or science or social studies. A lot of our CATE students who are involved in different cohorts across the district have to maintain a digital portfolio. So if they wanted to, they could add their content here, and they just would need to make a new page for that subject area. But we're going to keep this one just for English. So the next thing I'm going to do is insert a text box, and I'm going to go here to insert and scroll up to grab a text box. And I'm going to label this with my first category. Now this is something you're going to want to decide on with your PLC or your department or maybe even your campus, depending on how involved each of those levels is in this decision. So if your PLC decides that you're going to try to update and curate your content every grading period, then you would want to set yours up according to the grading period. If your department decides everyone is going to do a portfolio review for the end of the semester or the end of the school year, you might want to set that up by the genres that your students have been working on. That's completely up to you. Now, I'm just going to say for me, when I was in the classroom, my students did a portfolio review at the end of the semester. I really wish I had done it by grading period because I think that would have helped us to track their progress all the way through the year so that we could see where they were growing and maybe where they were still struggling. So just for the sake of our example today, I'm going to organize this by the grading period. So in that text box, I'm going to type first 6 weeks. And I want this to be a little bit bigger. If I click on normal text and maybe heading, okay, it looks pretty good. And then I'm going to center this here. I also want my kids to do a reflection on the learning objectives or their goals for that 6 weeks. What did we work on and what specifically was their goal that they were trying to achieve? So they've got a place where they can do some reflecting here. And then I also want them to drop in some samples of the work that they did during the 6 weeks that was trying to achieve that goal. And I kind of like this one. This is the one that we used in the sample, so I will start with this one. And this gives me a place to add in a summative assessment and maybe a formative assessment here and an in-class practice assignment here. And that might be journaling or brainstorming or some kind of blueprinting exercise like the ones that I did when I did my sample portfolio. So right underneath that will be the place where kids can write their connect, extend, challenge, reflection. So they also have some space to write underneath their sample because I want them to think about why this sample in particular shows their growth. In order to grab that sample and drop it in, I'm going to click on my Grade Plus and go to Google Drive. So under my magnifying glass, I can search and try to find the sample that I want to use. I did press recent here and it's still on recent documents and my expository essay is actually right there. So I'm going to choose this one and drop it in and you'll notice this is the actual Google Doc for my essay. And if I click on this arrow, it's going to open it in a new tab so I can make sure that this is the correct piece. And that's it. That is my LitPro expository essay. And then for my formative assessments, I'm going to repeat that procedure. I'm going to click on the Grade Plus. I might upload something. I might find the image of whatever my assignment was, or I might insert something from Drive, depending on where I have that saved. Once I have all of my content updated, I'm going to go up to the Publish button. And it's really important that you publish your work every time you make changes. I don't want to make any changes to my naming convention, so I'm just going to click Publish again. So just like everything else in the Google Suite, all of your work is going to auto-save. The only difference is it doesn't auto-publish. So if you want your audience to see the updated information, you're going to want to get into that habit of clicking Publish on a regular basis. It's just like in the old days when we had to save everything and keep clicking the Save button. If I want to be sure that my content is here and that my audience can see it, I can go to one of two places. I can click on Preview, and here is my English 1 site, and I've got my reflection space and I've got my actual work sample. And if I click on my home page, okay, and that looks good. These are my pictures of myself, right? And I can see what it's going to look like on a large screen, but also on a tablet like an iPad or maybe even on a phone. So I'm going to exit that preview. The way that students are going to share their portfolio with you is by either copying and pasting that site link. So if I hit this button right here with the link, I can grab the URL. That might be a great way to share. That might be to send that in a Google form or to share that with me in Google Classroom. Either one of those things would work. I'm also going to ask my kids to share their portfolio with me just by typing in the name of my teacher here. That's going to give them access to my materials. So I'm going to try Travis Leach. And since Mr. Leach is my teacher, I don't mind giving him editing access because he can also leave me feedback and drop in a text box to give me some encouragement or some support or ask me some questions. And then I'll click send. So that's going to send Mr. Leach my digital portfolio. What's really interesting about that is, remember, we've organized our sites. We've changed that naming convention to start with the 1 or the 2 or the 3 in the class period. So as the teacher, so we're going to switch hats for a minute. So as the teacher, once my kids share their sites with me, I'm going to get a long list of all of their websites so that I can access their digital portfolios from there. So I'm going to click on that sites icon here in the top left corner just to show you what I'm talking about. When I go to Sites Home, I can see all of the sites that I've created, but also all of the sites that are shared with me. And the easiest way to take a look at these and to see them at a glance is to click on List View and then sort by title. So you'll see that all of my first period sites are lumped together, all of my second and fifth and seventh and so on. So I'll see those as a list of all of my students' sites. At the end of the school year, my kids go away for the summer. Their digital portfolios are still housed in Google. And at the beginning of the next school year, all they have to do is transfer that share permission to their new teacher. So when they're done with English 1, the English 2 teacher will tell them, go into share, remove your teacher from last year, add me, and then save. So all of these will drop off for me. I won't have a list of 1,000 different digital portfolios. All of those will drop off of my list, and then I'll start seeing my new students as they share with me during the new school year. The other great piece about this system is that when my students share their sites, they also, remember, they've created it through the Google Suite, so that travels with them anywhere that they go in Northside. So if my students transfer from one school to another, if a student goes to alternative school and then they come back, all of their content is still saved in Google Drive. So we're not going to lose any of their materials if they change schools. And then hopefully when they get to their new school, if their teacher says, can I see your portfolio? All they have to do is open it, share it with the teacher, boom, they're done. So thanks for joining me for a look at how to create a portfolio through digital portfolio through Google Sites. And if you have any questions, we would love to hear from you. You can tweet us or email us at barbara.bloomingdale@nisd.net. Can't wait to see what you and your students create this year.